Hey, good evening, everybody. It is August 11th at 6 p.m., so we'll get started with the Planning Development Zoning Commission meeting for tonight. We'll start with roll call. Ryan Miller, that's me, I'm here. Kyle Raskin.
Here.
Marianne Atkinson.
Here.
Kenneth Haynes.
Here.
Christy Kennard has not been able to join us yet. Dolores Martin.
Here.
And William Richardson.
Here.
Excellent. If I can have everybody stand and join me for the pledge, please.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you. Any public comment cards this evening? No? Excellent. Okay, so we'll open up with our consent agenda tonight, which contains 3 items. First being approval of the final plat from Meridiana Section 26A. Number 2, approve Meridiana Section 32D preliminary plat. And finally, approving the meeting minutes to date. If there's no objections to that, I'll make a motion.
Second.
And all those in favor? Yes, sir. Oh, okay.
I'm sorry.
Live by yourself.
Motion passes 6-0 though. Okay. On to our regular agenda. If nobody has any objections, let's combine items A, B, and C, which will be consideration and possible action to approve the Primrose Detention Reserve A preliminary plat, Primrose Section 1 preliminary plat, and Primrose Section 2 preliminary plat. Please take it away.
Good evening, Commission members. These are proposed plat for detention pond and 2 residential sections within the Primrose Master Plan development, which was approved by City Council in July 7, 2025. Primrose development is located south side of Rodeo Palms Parkway, east of County Road 48, and staff recommends conditional approval of drainage detention reserve A preliminary plat, section 1 preliminary plat, and section 2 preliminary plat of Primrose.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and for detention reserve A, there are 2 conditions. One is for adding a note that the plat future Kirby alignment is subject to change as the master plan develops. Item number 2, provide mod 29 Lono. And since Primrose is located within ETJ, item number 3 doesn't apply for this, and we can exclude this. So staff recommendation is approval with 2 conditions for detention reserve A. For Primrose Section 1, conditions are provide clarification regarding the 40-foot right-of-way shown along Rodeo Palms Parkway. Please show the acreage of section and their associated flows for the drainage plan. Provide mod 29 Lono, letter of no objection. And item number 4 doesn't apply for this since it's located in ETJ. So staff recommends conditional approval for Primrose Section 1 with 3 conditions. For Primrose Section 2, staff recommends conditional approval with conditions to add note that the plat that future Kirby alignment is subject to change as the master plan develops. About reviewing note 9 regarding maintenance responsibility of Rodeo Palms Parkway. Please show the acreage of sections and their associated flows on drainage plan. Provide mod 29 Lono, and last item doesn't apply for it because it's located in ETJ. So staff recommendation is conditional approval with conditions, which are 4 conditions.
Perfect. Does anybody have any questions?
I just wonder if it's ever going to be bigger than 60-foot lots over there.
So I do have a question. Does
Yes, sir.
Anybody know who the responsibility of the existing Rodeo Palms Parkway is right now?
The existing section of the Rodeo Palms Parkway, maintenance responsibility?
Yes.
I don't want to give the wrong answer.
My name's Ashley Wagner. I'm the applicant with
Yes, ma'am.
PHRA Engineering. So we have a interlocal agreement with Mud 47, and it will be the responsibility of the county to maintain the paved portion that we will be paving along Rodeo Palms Parkway.
Okay, so does the county take care of the existing parkway as well? Or is that going to be the county's going to take care of the new portion?
It's a county road, so
Okay.
I believe that they will be taking care of that, and we're
Okay.
building to their standards.
Okay, okay.
And just to add, I believe we have, there's a split too. There's a portion that will be on the city side, and there's a portion that's on the county side as well.
Okay.
So we can follow up with more details on that. I don't want to
Yeah.
give the wrong information in any way. We can talk after the meeting, get the specific location, and pass on that information.
Okay, all right, thank you. I just want to make sure that, I guess the entities are taking care of the same portion. The existing portion is taken care of by somebody, and then the new portion is taken care of by somebody else, because that's when you start having issues and stuff. So, okay, thank you.
What other questions y'all have? None?
Motion to approve with conditions?
I'll second it.
And that's 2 conditions on agenda item A, 3 conditions on agenda item B, and 4 conditions on agenda item C. Is that correct? Perfect. Second?
Yes.
All those in favor then? Motion passes unanimously 6-0. Perfect. Okay, agenda item D, consideration and possible action to forward with a final report recommending approval to City Council for amending ordinance number 2024-0-35.
As you may recall, there is a request to amend the Delbado Lakes PUD to include about 106-acre tract east of Manvel Parkway. This request was initially reviewed at the June PD&Z meeting, but was tabled due to insufficient information. Since then, the applicant has submitted additional materials, including a preliminary drainage analysis and traffic impact analysis. The site plan has also been revised with a reduced lot count, added park space, increased landscape buffer, and modification to the overall layout of lots, detention pond, and access points. The report provides more details on this updates. The proposed PUD amendment confirms to the goal of comprehensive master plan. However, staff requests further clarification on several issues, including access points, traffic improvements, right-of-way responsibilities, and the status of the MOD annexation. The applicant is here to present their request, and if these issues are adequately addressed during tonight's meeting, staff is prepared to recommend approval.
Very good, thank you. I guess then probably be best if hear from the applicant.
Good evening.
Evening.
And I apologize, I've lost my voice, so I'm going to do my best tonight. But I'm Catherine Parker with Meta Planning and Design. I was here with you guys, I guess a couple months ago now, going over the plan. So I'll go through the presentation, but be a little bit more brief and just kind of highlight some of the changes that we've made. But feel free to stop me if you have any questions. So as was mentioned, this is a proposal for an expansion to the PUD for DeBella Lakes. The tract is just to the west of the existing DeBella Lakes development. Here's the revised land plan that was mentioned. So the primary configuration has stayed relatively the same, but due to some additional existing constraints on the property, we did revise it some, and with that, we've been able to add an additional park. I don't know if the mouse shows up here. In this corner, there's an additional park. So there's 2 designated park areas, and then again, still the detention that would be amenitized with trails and such. And the lot count was reduced slightly with the additional amenities that were added. We're now proposing 296 lots in the development at the same percentage of the below 60 and above 60 that we previously discussed. Again, here's the overall development, including the existing Double Lakes, and the idea is still to maintain a cohesive development between the 2 areas, and all the amenities and all of the quality will be the same through the expansion tract. Here's the phasing of the expansion tract specifically. One of the questions that staff had that we were trying to provide additional clarification on with this too is in regards to Manvel Parkway. There are separate agreements related to the construction of Manvel Parkway, but as a part of this expansion tract, the developer has said they would provide the second full lane of Manvel Parkway up to the entrance that we're proposing here for phase 1. And that would include a crossing over that canal into the development. So that I know had been a concern as far as the access and the timing of that. And so that will all be within phase 1 of the project. And then here we have, again, just highlighting the amenities. So the large lake throughout the development that would be able to be utilized with trails, landscaping, and then the 2 parks. And all of this would also have access to the existing facilities in Double Lake, including the rec center. These are some of the images of the proposed rec center expansion that would also be a part of this. This would allow the developer to create an enclosed recreational space at the existing site. And then again, just a refresher on the builders, it would be Toll Brothers and Shea Homes, and these are some of the homes that they've previously done and would be similar quality to what would go in here. I just wanted to take a minute to go through the comments that staff had that they'd asked for clarification on at the meeting. So there were, I believe, 5 or 6 items in their staff report that they wanted additional clarification on, so I'm going to just quickly run through those. One of them was in regards to the access points. What we're currently showing, we have 3 points of access provided to the tract, 1 to Croy Road and 1 to Manvel Parkway, and then 1 that would be for future development to the west of the property. Part of the reason for not having the 4 full access points is that we've been asked to eliminate a connection to Double Lane due to some concerns of adjacent residents and wanting to minimize any impact to anyone who lived along that road. If that's something that the commission would like us to add back in, we can accommodate that, but that was one of the reasons we had taken that out. Originally, we had shown a connection to that, but we were trying to be considerate of some of the comments that we had. And so with that, we would include something in the PUD that would allow for the access to the tract to be approved as currently proposed. If you have any additional questions or thoughts on that, we're willing to discuss that, but that's kind of the justification for it, is trying to just be considerate of existing residents. One of the other items was finalization of detention requirements. I know that the project engineer has been working with city staff on this and has submitted some revised documents, and to the best of our knowledge, everything has been submitted to the city that they've requested. So if there's any additional clarification or anything that they need, we'll look into it. I do have the project engineer here if there's any specific questions in regards to that. Implementation of phasing and traffic improvements. Again, already pointed out the clarification for Manvel Parkway specifically. As far as Croy Road goes, that's a separate agreement with separate ownership, but we would connect to the existing, and any future realignment that happens on Croy Road has been considered for this project. One of the other comments was right-of-way construction responsibilities and timeline. A lot of the things that came up in the TIA in regards to like right turn lanes and all that would be dealt with in the construction plan. So with those with the TIA, the developer is aware of any improvements that would have to be made, but those would show up at a different stage of the project. So there's a commitment to meet all of those needs. It's just not something that would be called out specifically for the zoning component of it, but they're aware of it. And then the last thing was the completion of the mud annexation. That's already in progress with the city. I know that there's been stuff submitted from the project attorney to the city attorney, and there's been some initial discussions happening with that. And so that's separate. I don't know the specifics of, the stage of that, but it is in progress. It's been initiated. So as far as I'm aware, all of the conditions that staff mentioned, we've addressed to the best of our abilities, and we're happy to answer any questions or concerns any of you have.
Okay, I do have a question. You mentioned 2 parks. What size are they?
1.8 acres is this one, and 2.9 for the dog park. And then we've got about 25 acres of the detention that, again, would have trails around it. And that's for this piece on its own. Let me get back to for the project as a whole, including the existing DeBella Lakes, there's over 100 acres of amenity space for the project.
Who else has questions?
I don't know if this is really just more of a comment because we had such a large turnout of residents that were against the development. Has it been thought that like the outside lots, to keep those acre lots, and then the inside go into the more of the PUD where the 50, 60-foot lots? Or has it been discussed at all or thought about?
No, as far as the design goes, this is what's been considered to make the project successful, but we have added, there are some buffers that are along the property. I know previously there was a 10-foot buffer along the Bella Lane, now it's 20-foot, and then there are just buffers along the perimeter also for drainage and such. So we're trying to, at least give some type of separation,
Right,
but as far as
I'm-
lot sizes, no, sir.
I'm just thinking about, yes, the people that live in that community right now, that they're used to seeing houses on acres, where if it was designed as such, the outside of it, it would still appear the same, but then as you went into the development, it would be more of a suburban type setting. The other thing, has it been thought of, as far as, we had 2 driveways that are going to go out on Crocs Road. Has it been discussed about, like driveway 1, which is closest to 288, making that a left turn only, and the one to the east, a right turn only that dumps out into Masters? And hopefully that would, I'm not sure where driveway 2 was, if that's going to help get around the weirdness of that road where you have the right turn and then the left turn. Because that would put the burden on the people that are buying these homes to get to the correct road, to either go to 288, taking your left, or your right to Masters. And that would also, like I said, alleviate some of the traffic on that road.
So there has been a TIA, completed, and they've looked at some of those things, and I know there are right turn lane is proposed in some areas. So all of that needs to be done to achieve the TIA.
Right and left only, not a turn lane. Like I'm leaving out of that subdivision, I'm on driveway 1, I can only go to the west. And if I'm on driveway 2, I can only go to the east. And that way, the traffic problem is going to be inside the community, where, I see where you have a
Are we
street.
on the right subdivision?
You want me to?
Because you got me backwards.
That's what I was fixing.
I'm thinking, isn't this Croaks?
This is Croy, and this is one driveway going to Croy, and then this is Manvel Parkway, and this is
Which will
one coming
connect
out.
back.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it would have
connect
to go to the right then, okay.
But I mean,
I
what
was-
concerns me on this is that's kind of a fire nightmare. It's going to be a traffic nightmare anyway.
Yes, it will.
of course, they're only responsible for part of 58, I'm assuming.
Right.
So you're going to have a messed up 58, a smooth 58, a messed up 58, a smooth 58 until it gets developed over who knows years.
So my question is, I guess, with the driveways that are here, and what is staff hoping to see? Because, you know, there's only two essentially proposed driveways. One has been removed in an attempt to, you know, community request. The other one dumps off into, you know, future proposed. So, actively, there's really only two driveways on this entire thing right now.
Can you tell us where that third one is? Because that's where I was going to ask too. You got the one that goes to Croy and the one that goes to Manvel Parkway. Where was that third one? Where was that?
We're proposing for a future connection
Which-
when the adjacent property is developed. We're allowing for
Develop.
future
You
connectivity.
could develop in 5 years, you could develop in 20.
And plus,
And then the removed one was somewhere down here.
Down here,
Yes,
right? That was-
We had
that was
originally
going to
proposed one
develop.
down to Delbella Lane, correct?
Yeah, that one's gone.
But I mean, you're looking at 296 lots. Did
Yeah, so
I get that right?
let's let staff answer your question real quick.
So,
from our existing current standards, it does not meet the access point requirement, and that was one of the issues that staff had mentioned. We do have a traffic memo that was provided, but again, there were some questions that staff had which were not addressed, and we can get to that. But in terms of the access point, the third access, which is shown as like connecting to future development, that doesn't qualify as an access because the access point requirement is that it gets access from an existing collector street. So you're right. In effect, there are two access points being proposed on the plan. So that is a deviation, and if the commission is okay with that, this plan as shown can be made part of the PUD document to move forward. And even like the construction of Manvel Parkway and the bridge, those are some of the things that is underway, discussions, and solidifying that as part of the MUD annexation process is underway. We wanted you all to be aware of that. Do you want to address the concerns you had on the TIA?
Yeah, it's still ongoing. We did have some comments provided to the applicant over, I guess, some of the things that we've seen in the document. I think for the most part, the thing that we're kind of looking at is, I guess one of the key points that it hits on is the level of service, being, you know, how much delay there is based on traffic generated. And I know with what they proposed so far, that they are, it did trigger dedicated turn lanes off of Croy and on Del Bello Boulevard, if I'm not mistaken. So with what they're generating, they are required to do some improvements. We're still working on a little bit more of the kinks, but for the most part, they are proposing to do 2 dedicated left turn lanes into the development off those 2 streets.
Okay. And obviously, whatever road they connect to, you know, they improve their portion of it. That's all they're responsible for. But where in here do y'all see, you know, this third or fourth connector for, you know, the plan as it's drawn?
If I could, and staff, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the ordinance also permits boulevards to count as a second point of access in this instance. So in essence, if we provided a boulevard off of Croy Road, that would then provide 3 points. And then again, we could always connect to Delbella Lane. That would achieve that 4th point, or if we could be granted a variance for that one to be accommodating to existing residents.
Okay, I'm sorry, just clarify for me real quick. I see you said 3 there. I see 2.
The ordinance permits, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but the ordinance permits a boulevard entrance to count as 2 points of access. So what I'm proposing is that if we did a boulevard off of Croy Road, then that would be 2. Then we'd have the third off of Manvel Parkway. Then we'd only be asking for a variance for that 4th point, which allows us to limit the connectivity to Delbella Lane.
Okay.
this needs to be redrawn before it comes to us again, because I hate doing the word variance. It's just
Well, and also, in the conclusion
But-
part of this, it's saying the last transportation was in 2014. So a lot has happened in the last 11 years.
Well, that's why I was asking with the 296 lots. You're pushing roughly 600 cars
Yeah.
out of 2 entrance and exits.
Yes, and Croy
So-
Road is not built.
And,
It's
yes.
not done for
So,
all that traffic.
and that's the question I have answering what you said. Are y'all planning on turning Croy Road into a boulevard?
So Croy Road, there's a separate, I believe it's like a 5-party, it's a multi-party agreement on Croy Road and the construction of that we are not involved with. There's a property owners on either side of that realignment
You
that are
possibly
involved.
wouldn't have any idea when the connection to go straighter, like what's on couple of.
Yeah,
the other
we're aware
maps.
of what the proposed realignment
Yeah,
is,
so
and
you
we're
have no
accommodating
idea
that,
when
but
that would actually take place either, to
Correct.
straighten it out, to give it where there's more flow, better flow.
yeah, it's connecting, like, kind of like
Come on the
this.
floor if you don't mind. I just want to make sure y'all are taking out all the 50-foot lots and only putting 60 or wider in?
No, ma'am,
Okay.
we have
See,
50-foot lots.
That's
That's
what I
what,
was reading over here. That they were all crossed out of the other one and just.
Yeah, redlined, that's why I
Yeah,
was-
that's why I was asking also. Okay, so it is going to be like what it's on the map I've got brought up has the
sorry.
25 and 74 lots on one side. It's SF3, and then you've got the 50-foot lots south of there. So this rendition is close to exactly what you're wanting to do, right?
Hang on, I had it on the screen. Is there something I need to do to share it?
Yeah, they're controlling it.
But yes, to answer your question, it's all 50s and 60-foot lots.
Okay.
It's compatible with what was in the original document as far as the lot percentages.
Okay, so this red line one is not applicable.
No, what happened in that red line that you're looking at is we modified how the breakdown is. There was previously a requirement for 50 and 55 foot, and we just grouped it together.
Okay.
So it's still the same number below 60 foot and the same number 60 or larger. We just minimized the different categories.
Okay, my concern is getting out on Croy Road.
Yes, it's not
And
gonna work.
when I go to work, I use that road. And
It's
yes,
not-
before 288 was finished, it was horrible.
Yeah, but it's not made for all that traffic.
No, it's not.
It never was.
Yeah, so that's a big concern for me, especially with 296 lots going in. And I know not every one of them are gonna go out Croy Road, but if you live over there, you're gonna go out Croy Road.
Yes, you are.
That's just it. And that road, I mean,
It's not meant for traffic like that.
it's barely 2 lanes.
Looking at the map,
More of a,
Yeah.
kind of a
Yes, sir.
safety issue.
looking at that map, you can safely, I would safely assume that everybody that buys north of that big lake, they're going to use Croy Road.
Of course they are.
Exactly.
Everybody south of it is probably going to use Manvel Park. That's just a lot of cars just going on Croy Road. That just gives me pause.
Yeah.
Well, and
That's my
even,
biggest drawback.
even if it's 2 cars per house, you still have a tremendous amount.
I know there was a question asked about Croy Road, and most of you may be looking at the plan, and if you see, there's a dotted line that shows the proposed Croy Road alignment, and that's what the applicant was referring to, like there's other parties involved who will be responsible for that realignment of Croy Road, and the applicant would connect to the existing portion of the Croy Road right
Mr.
now.
Abraham, but when is that projected to be?
We don't have a timeline on that.
Well, see, that's your Pandora's box right
They
there.
own the property on the other side too?
Side of Croy?
It's projected over. Do they own that already?
My client? No.
So you're
You mean which
projecting
side?
to move a road that nobody owns?
No, the neighboring
different
property is already
developer owns
proposed.
Okay.
It's a different developer, other parties
Yeah,
involved.
Okay, that way I'm clear on that.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah. Yeah, it's,
Okay.
That would make it a lot safer.
And from a traffic impact analysis, also, I would want to mention that what was provided was reviewed by us, and there were a couple of instances where the numbers I don't know if it was the numbers or the level of service that we needed some clarification because it didn't match exactly what it was stated. And the way it was looked at is like, what is the impact to the level of service when this new development is added, and also considering all the development around in the area, including Valencia. So even though some of the numbers were from a previous older study, the newer developments and impact from like specifically Valencia in the area was factored in. And from staff's perspective, we just needed a little more clarification on whether it'll work, whether exactly what is shown in terms of the change in level of service is actually what they get from the numbers factored in. So that piece was missing, and that's what we had called out. But like the applicant said, certain aspects of the TIA can also be refined and detailed out at a later stage. From staff's perspective, the access, the variance that was mentioned, that is one of the things that's up for consideration today. If y'all are not okay with that allowance for 3 access points, including the boulevard entry, then that's something that needs to be addressed on the PUD document somehow. Just wanted to put that out in terms of traffic and access point.
Okay.
Well, it's a little uncomfortable when we hear at a later date, but no one wins that later date is. So it's going to be a mess.
And again, I'm concerned about the neighborhood, the people that are there that came to talk about this. And that's why I thought, proposing maybe a larger on the outside facing them would appease them some. And it was my mistake. I was looking at, it should just on Croy's, it should just be a right, has to go to Masters and then get to Manvel Parkway to get to 288. Because that curve in that road is dangerous.
It's a mess.
And no other commercial property is going to be put except where the 2 are that face 288 right now. There's not going to be any inside the neighborhood anywhere?
No, ma'am, this expansion does not propose any commercial development. It's just recreational and residential.
Residential, okay.
And I just also want to, reiterate that the TIA, the drainage study, construction plans, all that stuff is going to continue to be worked through with staff before anything's constructed. We're looking at the zoning right now to see if there's the support for this type of development. We are currently working on those items and will continue to until there's a level of satisfaction with staff, and obviously further approval is required on those too. And so I just want to give that comfort that this is not going to now go be built tomorrow. There's still a lot of approvals that we will continue to work through with staff.
Yeah, because this isn't even master plan approval. This is
This is just zoning.
However, we do have a layout which would be made part of the PUD document. So if you're considering approval, some of the things would be part of the document, which becomes an ordinance, like the access point, which we mentioned. And on the TIA too, there are some issues for which we need clarification before staff can say that, yeah, everything looks good. And like the applicant said, they're working on it. Maybe before city council meeting, we may have that clarification. But today, we all will have to make a decision based on what we have in front of us.
so.
Enough information.
Talking for myself, I'm all for, you understand how the process works, things come along, but this seems like there's, a lot of open questions, clarification still needed, especially since, like I said,
Too many strings.
this goes into the PUD, so it's, it's a little more binding than, a non, one that was set up without a PUD where it was just, purely just a zoning thing.
Yeah, I
So
honestly
that's
think-
just where I personally sit. So
Yeah, we
what other
have-
questions y'all
We have
have?
too many concerns and not enough positive answers.
I mean, for once, I actually like the drainage on this. However, if I was the owner of that, I don't know if I'd like that drainage right there and that close to me on that property. It's on Double O Lane, Double O Lane. I mean, that's retention, isn't it?
Those are detention ponds.
Attention, yeah.
So which means it's gonna hold water constant, and you get flooding, of course, release table, all that has to be done every time. Is it gravity fed release on that one?
I'm not
Oh,
sure.
no, okay. I mean.
Yes,
that
there
could
you go.
change
There you go.
some rates, so.
I think that's all we want.
I mean, that's me on personal note. I mean, of
But
course,
that
I
is-
do like larger lots.
But
I
it
do like
is a
acreage.
concern.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It is a concern.
Because I know that lady, when she talked, that was one of her big things, so.
Yeah.
But I don't know if she saw that yet.
Then do we have more questions for the moment, or are we ready to make a motion? No more questions? So, thank you so much. We really appreciate all your information.
Thank you.
So, I'll make a motion then to forward a recommendation to the city council with approval with the notes that are in the staff report.
Second.
Second, all those in favor? And all opposed? The motion fails 0-6. Okay, agenda item E, presentation and discussion on comprehensive plan update and major thoroughfare plan update by Kending Keystone Collaborative. Good evening.
Good evening. This is the fourth workshop in this series for the comprehensive plan and major thoroughfare plan update. I'm Jennifer Mack, architect and senior urban designer with Keys Collaborative. And with me, I have Gary Mitchell, sorry about that, the president and project manager for the project. Some highlights tonight, and these are actually in your packet. You have this presentation as well as the future land use and character map that has the major thoroughfare plan lines on there. You have the narrative for the future land use character, and then you also have two items, the major thoroughfare plan table as well as the cross sections. And this presentation is it's not really meant to be a presentation, it's meant to be a workshop, so please feel free to stop us along the way or ask any questions that you might have. So tonight we'll be talking about the latest changes to the draft major thoroughfare plan map. We'll talk about the draft future land use and character map. I'll kind of walk you around some areas of Manvel, and then also potential areas that could be commercial or mixed use, and then the actions for the land use and community section of the comprehensive plan. Just as a reminder, this was the major thoroughfare plan that was presented back during the third workshop to you on May 27th. So you'll see this next one that I'm about to show you, it's slightly different. There's a reason for that. We're still working on the colors and how it's going to look. It was overlaid onto the future land use character, and so that's why it's grayed out. So we're still working on the final look of that. Just want to make sure we're clear on there. The previous one is a little bit easier to read, so you'll see that the blue, and the reason why I'm talking about this is because we have them side by side on the next couple slides. So the blue and the purple are going to be the 120-foot right-of-ways, so your parkways or your major thoroughfares. The red are going to be the arterials or the 100-foot right-of-ways, and then the collectors are the orange 80-foot right-of-ways. In the new version, you'll see kind of the bolder line on those parkways that we were talking about, the 120 foot, and then the grayer color is bolder color, thicker line weight is going to be the arterial 100 foot, and then the collector is that thinner gray line, that's the 80 foot. And so we have some zoomed in clips here. You'll see that we changed Patterson Road north of Del Bello Road to Collector versus Parkway. So that's dotted line here. I'm not sure if you can kind of see my mouse there. That dotted line, we changed it from the collector versus the parkway. And then just north of that, Lyra Road, we kept it as Lyra Road, Old Chocolate Bayou Road as an arterial. Then we removed the potential Croy Road extension east of Del Bello Road. So this connection here, you can see on the right-hand side that we removed it. And then we also removed the potential north-south connection from Croy Road extension up to Old Massey Road. So that's this dotted line here on the left-hand side. You can see over on the right-hand side by Dolores Martin Park that we removed that potential connection. We kept Olive Belcher Road as a parkway, given the development at Masters Road. So you'll see that that's the same on this right-hand side. And then we kept Markham Road alignment as a parkway north of Highway 6, but we reduced it to an arterial south. So you'll see it here on the right-hand side, how it goes from that boulder color and then gets to the lighter gray line. And then we also changed Pearland Sites Road to an arterial versus mostly parkway. So on the left-hand side, you'll see how it's mostly that purple with that little bit of red on that northeast corner here. And so now just keeping it arterial the whole way. On the next set of slides here, we removed the collector from Kirby Drive to Rodeo Palms Parkway. That's this orange line here on the left. And then we removed the potential direct connection from Kirby Drive South to Highway 6, and that's this black dotted line here. And then we ended Iowa Lane south of Highway 6 at Stevens versus Clark Road. So on the left-hand side, you'll see how it goes to this orange line, this black dotted line, and then on the right-hand side, you'll see that we ended up stopping it at Stevens Road instead of connecting all the way down to Clark. Now on the southeast side of Manvel, we added a collector from Masters Road to the potential Cemetery Road, which is this gray dotted line on the right-hand side. And then we removed the segment that continued east to Pearland Sites Road. So that's this cyan color here on the left. And then Gary.
Advancing with that arrows. Yes. Okay. Good evening, everyone. So we know that's kind of information in a vacuum in some ways. Why did we change certain roads or other things? Now we'll show you the land use side of things, and that kind of makes the connection, thinking about traffic generation and connections. But for those that were at our last meeting, we had shown this slide. This is kind of the foundation of how we did the future land use map, thinking about communities in terms of this spectrum from areas that are the most almost natural, untouched, to areas that are your, quote, urban core, traditionally a downtown. Not that we have a downtown in Manvel, but where things fall along that spectrum before we even think about specific types of land use like residential, commercial, industrial. Frankly, different land uses can occur along the spectrum. They can be designed to fit into these character types. So that's kind of in the background of the land use map. And then last time we also showed this slide just to, again, elaborate on this thought that rural areas, and we think about these three pieces, how much of the land is covered by not much of anything. It's still mostly open space with some buildings, not much paving. That's the rural character up in the top left. Then on the top right, getting into more of a suburban atmosphere. People are living closer together in subdivisions, and but still a fair amount of green space. It's larger lots, kind of a balance between development and green space. Then on the bottom right, we use the term auto-urban, and as I mentioned last time, that's the idea that the land is covered by a lot of buildings and especially pavement as we try and deal with the automobile, big parking lots at retail centers, but even within subdivisions, you start to see more driveways in front of homes if there's not as large a lot to put cars in a garage, for example. So the term auto-urban meaning it's got the land cover of an urban area, a lot of cover with building and pavement, but it's not a walkable place like a traditional downtown, which is what urban is on the bottom left. And again, we know that Manvel didn't develop with that type of downtown, but places where it's mostly about buildings. And people park on the street, park in parking lots, but really you don't see as much paving. Actually, you see more building coverage. It's usually the densest part of a city. So again, that's kind of the spectrum that we think about. Manvel is certainly starting on the rural side and especially suburban. That's how it has been in the recent past. Now you're starting to see more of that change as development is happening. So the future land use map that's in the packet tonight kind of combines those thoughts, different types of land use plus that character context. We talked about a lot of potential categories, decided to really try and keep it relatively simple. So we have a category that's rural preservation, and that really reflects so much of what we heard in our early public discussions, community input, people that have lived here for a long time, or people that even came here in recent years, came here for kind of a semi-rural atmosphere. We ended up not putting that in a lot of places on the map. That's that darker green. So either some of the wide open spaces up in the northeast ETJ, up near Oilfield Road, that direction, and then on the south side, some areas that either have significant floodplain or, again, they really haven't developed. They're still pretty large or undeveloped open spaces. The next category, estate residential, kind of that lighter green, and you'll see that takes up a fair amount of the map on, especially east of Masters, north of Del Bell Road. That really equates to your current 1 acre single family zoning. So areas that have a fair amount of population in some of those areas. There's people living there, but it was platted mostly with 1 acre or larger lots. So estate residential is people starting to live more in subdivision type situations or along public streets versus a very rural situation where you just see driveways coming off a rural highway to individual homesteads with a lot of land. Suburban residential, that darker yellow, is some of the discussion you've been having tonight, where people are living definitely in much closer quarters, smaller lots, subdivision arrangement, tends to getting into the center of a community typically, where there's then shopping nearby, schools, things like that. Master plan development, we don't use this category on many maps in other communities, but I've made the comparison because we worked with Fulshire before and other communities like that. One thing that you're certainly seeing is large master plan developments. So we use that category. And by the way, that's what the text in the packet is all about, is the description behind these categories and the map. But master plan development, as was described tonight, Del Bello Lakes as an example, a community that was planned across the board to have amenities, to have some open space, to have, whether it's using the stormwater detention as focal points, and again, some openness, but versus a more standard subdivision that is just laying out residential lots. There may not be a rec center, things like that. Commercial, just our typical commercial that we see along our major roadways, along the 288 corridor. And as we'll talk about here shortly, where it may emerge later over time, that idea of commercial retail following rooftops as residential areas develop. Industrial, we've only put it in that very southwest part of the city along the south side of Highway 6 and between the railroad tracks. It's kind of the existing uses that are there, but after some discussion, thought we didn't really see it happening anywhere else. But again, as we'll talk about later, this map can evolve over time. So in the text descriptions for each of these categories, it talks about what are the character objectives. So once again, using rural as an example, that's the objective, to preserve kind of that rural atmosphere in parts of the city, or at least estate residential, the larger lot residential. And as we talk about the different categories, it's not that when you see yellow on the map, especially, that there can't be commercial activity eventually in those areas, but residential is the predominant use that we're going to see in those areas in the future. Corner businesses, things like that may emerge over time. And then certainly the text talks about other potential land uses that might happen.
I'm sorry, what is the brighter green, the smaller ones up in the?
The brighter green, oh, those are parks. Those are parks.
Oh,
Thank you, sir.
okay, yeah.
Yes, parks are the very bright green, and then on the map, when you see it closer, we've called out a lot of the public facilities, schools, things like that as landmarks, just to know where those are today.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you for pointing that out, because they are, and Acre Lake is another example on the south side, certainly the land that's involved there. So big picture, let me just tell you some of the takeaways for us as we look at the overall map. We're going to do the same thing as we did with the thoroughfare plan and kind of take it a piece at a time. But generally, we know from the start of this process, and as I said, talking to your community, your leadership, kind of where you are as a city, the history you have as a more rural place, the reason some people moved here, but the wave of development you're getting now is kind of that next edge frontier of the greater metro area on the south side, the 288 corridor. So you see the darker yellows, the master plan development, really trying to focus that around the 288 corridor, and then it's starting to come along the State Highway 6 corridor. But whether it's on the south side, aside from Meridiana, or on the east side, the northeast part of the city and ETJ, trying to have less intensive development over time. And this is kind of a 10-year outlook. These maps will certainly be revisited as we're looking back to the 2015 plans. As I mentioned about master plan development, some of those same features, open space, sometimes a mix of housing types, sometimes a commercial component like the Keating Toyota that developed along with Del Bello Lakes, the extensive areas of state residential. We've got just a few. When we started this exercise, we thought we might show more rural than we ended up showing, but as I mentioned, as you really study the aerial views and drive the area, there's a fair amount of population living in the ETJ and in the edges of the city limits just on larger lot pattern. Commercial, the major commercial at least, certainly focused along the major roadways. As I said, we'll show you a next view that starts to look at where a commercial might emerge in other places, the industrial in the southeast, and the public facilities and parks called out. So here's that discussion on commercial mixed-use potential. When we look at a lot of maps like this in other communities, and also when we look at zoning maps, very often there's too much commercial on those maps, too much beyond what the market could ever bear. And so that's a thought that we have in mind as we do this. So what we have on the map is partly capturing certainly what's there today, but just looking at the State Highway 6 corridor, for example, we know every day, every week, there's new things happening there. There's new development in other parts of the city. So as we go around the map, they're hard to see on here, but we've got some areas, especially at key intersections, which ties back to the major thoroughfare plan or along some of the major roadways. Again, I mentioned that idea of retail following rooftops. So as areas develop, those corner retail proposals may pop up, and your service type businesses that serve nearby neighborhoods versus a Manvel town center scale of retail that's out by your major highways. And so what that is signaling, if they end up on the map, is places that it might be a cluster of commercial versus that stuff spreading out and sprawling along roadways, which leads to traffic issues over time. And as I mentioned, things that are more neighborhood serving, closer to residential areas versus driving all the way to Manvel Town Center, which you do maybe once a week or whenever to do your major shopping. But so we'll dive into the map, as I said, as we did with the MTP map, the thoroughfare plan. And again, stop us anywhere along the way. But I'll hand it back to Jennifer, kind of go around the map.
Okay, on the right-hand side, we have a little key map for you so that you can kind of know the general area, and that red dotted line, and then the blow-up is there to the left. So we're looking at the northwest portion of Manvel here. You can see with South Fork, Pomona, and then also Sedona Lakes we have in that pink master plan development use or character, I should say, and then mostly along the major thoroughfares or thoroughfares such as Magnolia Parkway and 288. You'll see the commercial also along Croy Road here. And then the yellow are technically not part of the master plan developments, but still have that similar character as Gary had mentioned. So that's why you'll see these pockets of yellow kind of mixed in with the pink color.
I just want to mention too, we didn't point out that on the map, we asked our map maker to do something more visual, more instantly recognizable. There's kind of a pattern on areas that are in the ETJ versus the city limits. So a lot of that northwest area, Pomona area is ETJ, for example. But if you look closer, that you can see kind of a pattern versus areas that are in the city limits. Because as you may know, when you look at the city limits and the ETJ on a map, sometimes it's hard to distinguish when you're in and when you're out. So we try to do it visually that way. But this one, here's an example of kind of those darker areas near some of the intersections. Those are what we're calling those commercial mixed-use potential areas. What we're thinking is that we wouldn't put them on the map just yet, that it's probably too soon, but we would have that as a separate graphic in the plan. So if you had a zoning change come to you, it might not be on today's future land use map, but there was a thought in mind that it's kind of a timing issue, it's a pace issue. Depending on how quickly rooftops are added in certain areas, that's when the retail will be proposed. Might come for a zoning change, things like that, if it's in the city limits, of course. So as we go through these, if you have some thoughts on those, but we're kind of looking at, again, major intersections based on the thoroughfare plan and kind of around the edges of suburban areas or residential areas, and then the edges of commercial as well, areas where commercial might start to extend as the community grows over time.
So then moving south of where we were just at, over by Manvel Town Center, again, you can see rodeo palms in the pink master plan development. And then on the right, staying with the pink, is the Presidio development, City Center, and then Valencia. So we have all that in the master plan development. You'll see that the yellow here is Blue Water Lakes. We kept that since it's not a traditional, or it's not a master plan development, but it is a suburban residential. And then mostly along Highway 6, you'll see it's, if not in the mixed use development like Presidio, then it's mostly in that commercial use. And then just south of that is a little bit of that blown up area that we talked about. That's that rural preservation. And then on this one, you can see for that mixed use commercial potential along Manvel Parkway, Rodeo Palms, and then also it extends along Pollard and Rodeo Palms Parkway as well.
One thing I was going to mention there, because we've had some discussion about showing Iowa Lane, for example, here on the south side of Highway 6, which would require a railroad crossing. We have Cemetery Road extending south of Highway 6, railroad crossing. You're only going to get so many crossings out of a railroad. Y'all got the nice Meridiana overpass, but we still think it's important to put those on the map. I'm at this stage of my career, I'm kind of at a never say never point. But if we are showing that area south as rural, if it stays that way, the road doesn't get built as a thoroughfare. It'll be what it is. But if something happens, if somebody can make development work in that area someday, we think it's important to show some collector roadway pulling traffic up to Highway 6 from that area. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. It's just a line on the map. So that's one example of the land use and the thoroughfare plan working together.
And this is kind of jumping a little bit back to the thoroughfare plan a little bit, but I did want to say there are some minor tweaks that we're working on for the major thoroughfare plan, so that Kirby should kind of be slightly adjusted here where it's Rodeo Palms Parkway, and then right now it kind of almost looks like it has a T, and that curve will be smoothed out. That was a remnant of whenever we removed the other collector that went to Rodeo Palms Parkway. So there's some fine tuning that we're still working on there. I should have mentioned that earlier. Now, going toward the northeastern side of Manvel, you'll see that it's mostly that estate residential that Gary mentioned earlier. We do have a couple pockets of commercial toward the outskirts of the city limit, or this is actually in the ETJ, currently along Masters Road. These are some industrial parcels, but if things were to ever change, they could potentially be commercial, especially with the amount of residential that's surrounding that area. And then we also have this pocket of commercial up here on Old Chocolate Bayou and Bailey Road. Then just east of Oilfield is that rural preservation. You'll also see a couple more pockets that could be potentially mixed use along Del Bello Boulevard and Del Bello Road, and then also here on Del Bello Road and Croy Road.
On that one, I was going to mention that commercial that's up at the top. Oops, there we go. If you can picture up on Bailey Road where there's the RV park, kind of east of Cullen and Old Chocolate. Anyway, our thinking is it's ETJ. The city doesn't really have zoning there, can't really control the land use, but ideally, that's an example of where you'd like to see commercial cluster around an intersection versus being spread out. But without zoning, it's tough to control that, but at least show that intent on the map. And then, as we said, the other potential areas, those dark crosshatch areas, or intersection locations again, those typically will take some time. That's why our thought is to not put commercial necessarily on those corners. But it would be something in the plan to indicate we were thinking ahead to what could happen at certain intersections.
And then going toward sort of the center of Manvel, over by where we are now. So City Hall is down here in this blue area, well, in the red commercial, but this blue star here. You'll see mostly Lakeland, and it is in the suburban residential. You'll see that mixed-use potential over by where the Manvel Public Works is and the new police station. So there's potential for that along Masters Road. And then still everything basically surrounding north and south of Belcher Road being in that estate residential, including the airport, and then seeing the pattern kind of continue with the commercial north and south of Manvel, with the potential of mixed use over by the junior high school and Manvel High School.
What's that black? What's that fishnet looking stuff? I mean, I know that's on Masters Road, but why
Right.
is it like that?
All those areas that have that appearance, that's that, what we're calling commercial mixed-use potential.
Okay.
Areas that we're not suggesting to put on the map just yet, but to maybe have this as a separate graphic in the plan that says, reasonably, these are areas where commercial could emerge over time. It's going to be a matter of time with rooftops and market. But the Masters Road corridor, for example, has the highway business zone zoning right now. That's an area I might consider that we put it on that corridor. I think it's already kind of emerging as more of your local Main Street versus the Highway 6 regional corridor. It's got schools, church activity, a lot of public facilities, which is very common in a downtown area. So, but that's one example where you could see that, go ahead and put that on the future land use map.
Yeah, there are a few businesses down there with some of the mixed residential stuff, but yeah, it's mostly schools, the post office, and stuff like that, but I just was concerned about why it was blacked out.
Yeah, and that's why we're kind of using that terminology. There's going to be areas even along Highway 6 where there's still homes that have been there for a long time. The area around them is converting to more commercial, and I used that term predominant earlier, that certain areas are going to have a predominant land use, but it's not going to be the only land use. There's other things still going on. And there's discussion in the text that things like churches, schools also follow rooftops, and it's hard to predict where they're going to land. And they're typically allowed in most residential districts, churches and schools.
Thank you.
And then on the east side of Manvel, so again, continuing to see where the rural preservation is north of Oilfield, and then mostly the estate residential until you get to the Highway 6 area. And then we've already discussed the suburban residential and commercial, but just kind of the industrial being mostly on the south side of Highway 6 with the exception of the recycling center that's just north. And then on the southwest side, this.
Let me point out before we start on this one.
Yes.
We have a map error here. We just caught it today. Meridiana is the kind of the core of Meridiana is meant to be in that pink master plan development. Your area of that farthest southmost part of the city limits is meant to be the light green estate residential. So the area south of Masters Road, that's kind of a square.
Thank you. I was going to ask you about that.
Yes. We had it on previous versions, but somehow we missed it on this last version. So- Yes. Sorry about that.
Quite that far, so I was okay.
But everything north of Masters is correct as far as being in that master plan development for Meridiana. And then we have the estate residential that's just outside the Meridiana development. And then the area around Acre Lake on the north side is that suburban residential with some more of those hatched areas for potential mixed use that could eventually happen. And then also one more hatch mixed use potential for Uzel and Masters Road.
Another thing about those crosshatch areas, look at the size of those. Those are big areas. So again, we don't want to go overboard with, how much commercial an area can support. So, but again, thinking about it's hard to predict where you're going to see your retail and commercial proposals emerge based on property owner intentions and when they start to engage a planner and plan their land and bring a proposal to you. So, but kind of showing with the major thoroughfare lines where some of the potential locations are.
That's being very generous too,
Yes.
by the way.
Yes.
Okay.
And then the southeast portion of Manvel, you'll see mostly in the rural preservation, a little bit of the estate residential between Beisel and there's not quite a road right here, but between just south of Beisel, and then the commercial and industrial being between Beisel and Highway 6. So circling back around, just to kind of get a better picture of this area, since we were kind of going to the west and to the east, but so around where we are right now, Manvel City Hall being here in the center, just kind of a look at what that might look like, and then how those potential commercial can expand south and north a little bit, some potential areas anyways.
All right, that was a lot of information, and we'll take a pause here, but let me just recap. Kind of like your zoning ordinance, you have your zoning map, but you've got all that text that goes with it. The map can't stand on its own. There's all that text narrative that we gave you that goes with it. So these are some of the key points from that narrative. I think sometimes people think of these maps as if we adopt this, now this is our next 10, 20 years, it can change. You shouldn't change every week, every month. But as your market evolves, your real estate market, as you start to see what's playing out on the ground, as individual homeowners, property owners make their decisions to let land turn over, things are going to evolve. So it's not set in concrete, but it's really a starting point for when something comes to you. Well, this is what our map shows. That's what we were thinking in 2025. Here's now a proposal to look at. If it's different from our map, let's have that discussion. Why is it different? Is it good for the community? So it's kind of a starting point versus having nothing like this, just having your zoning map and having to make these decisions. So it's not the zoning map. It's not a regulatory map. It's a guidance document. The comprehensive plan overall is. The zoning map is the legal map, the property by property map. This is meant to be a little broader brush. And it is looking ahead, especially in a place that's growing as quickly as Manvel is. It's a 10-year outlook at most. And I make that point because sometimes these maps are done as build-out maps. If every square foot of our city limits in ETJ was built, what should they be? And first of all, who knows? But we look at these maps, that's the next point there, is more of a growth management tool that as of 2025 and looking ahead the next 10 years or so, whether it's from a utility standpoint, you've talked about traffic concerns tonight, school capacity sometimes comes out, and you certainly coordinate with your school district, but how much development can we handle? What's the best locations for it? So that was that idea of, can we keep it more concentrated toward the 288 corridor in the near term? Things are happening along Highway 6. But having said that, that area on the east that's in estate residential, it can change. That's how these other master plan developments happened. People assembled land, they convinced individual property owners to sell their land, they put it together, and you got a big proposal. That can happen in other places. Then that's when you have that discussion. Our map says estate residential, partly because of the sentiment that we heard that we want to keep a semi-rural atmosphere in some part of Manvel. But if something comes forward, then you have that conversation. Can we handle it? Utilities, traffic, schools, is it in the right location? So that would be a reason for the map to change. And then as you change your zoning map, this map should come along with it. Or this map certainly should lead the zoning map at times. So in a city that's growing this quickly, we tend to see, I call them rolling updates. You know, we're going to say in the plan, your entire plan, but this map needs to be revisited annually. You know, what's changed in the situation? How has the map changed between this and the zoning map? So those are some of the takeaways. So I started this conversation last time we were here. We need to have this discussion just to see where things stand. Every city we work with, no matter if they're a very urban place, if they're semi-rural, if they're in between, pretty much no city we work with wants to talk about apartments. Plain and simple. So the discussion on the floor here is other types of housing. There's duplexes, there's townhomes, there's a kind of small home. These they're called cottage courts in some areas, kind of homes built around a common space. In other words, there's other types of housing out there. At this point in Manvel's development, the answer may be, we're not there yet. This is mostly, again, some part of the community. We want kind of a semi-rural atmosphere. It's more single-family detached housing at this point. That could come from, as on this next slide, it could come from traffic concerns again. You know, the kind of the side effects of density. We're not ready for the traffic, not ready for the population that would be added to schools, whatever it is. But we want to have that conversation because in the text description that goes with this map, one option is to say anything that's more density than a single-family home can only happen in master plan developments. And the thinking there is we want to see it master plan. We want to see it kind of integrated into a larger development where there's a place for single family, there's a place for townhomes, however that's done. Another option is, because you do have zoning, we certainly work with cities without zoning, the specific use permit tool, which is where things might be allowed theoretically in a zoning district, but not by right. They have to come get a specific use permit. So that means case-specific review. And you look at the specifics of that location. Is this the right place for a certain use? You can put conditions on that. And so we put some language in the text that goes with the map about locational criteria. Denser housing, typically you'd want near your major thoroughfares, your larger roadways that can handle the traffic. Sometimes it's kind of a transition between your commercial areas and your low-density residential. So that can be a locational criteria. So in other words, somebody comes in and proposes something, you've got something in the plan to judge against and to think about. But as I say, option one may be, at this stage in our development, we really only see this housing being part of a larger master plan development. Manvel has certainly done what other cities have done with a few uses, gas stations, dollar stores. You did the distancing requirement that's in the zoning. Baytown is an example, a larger city in the area that has a distancing requirement between multifamily. So effectively, they've kind of set a cap on how many apartment complexes can be in that city just by requiring them to be spread out. That's another approach. So we bring this up just because we need to deal with it in the plan. We need to say if it's not allowed at all right now or not envisioned, if it's envisioned in certain areas such as master plan development, or it could be a case by case as people bring it to you. What I will tell you is as you continue to grow, you're going to get these proposals. People are going to want to build these things here as they see this as a growing community. You've got the say, that we're not ready for it. We don't have the utilities, the traffic, the roads to handle the traffic, et cetera. But we need to have some discussion about it in the comprehensive plan.
Well, I'm looking at it as, and maybe it's just because I'm old-fashioned, that the suburban is, our way of dealing with more people. And the duplexes and apartments are just so far out there because Manvel, when I first came or realized where Manvel was basically just a rural with a very little commercial. And I'm looking at it as now we're getting some suburban mixed with our rural, and with that suburban we're getting some more commercial, which is nice. But I think for at least what I see in the near future, that like apartment complexes and such just are crowding too much. That's my opinion.
And we do have some garden homes going in with Meridiana. That's what the big dirt hole is over there.
Right.
And I know into Iowa Colony, they have duplexes. But I agree, I think that kind of massive amount of people in one area is something that we really need to think further down the line. Because the garden homes, for me, was that, putting that there, to me, is like an apartment complex. Because there's one way in or one way out, so it's going to add a lot more people. But as long as the garden homes are single family, like what we've got listed here, that's probably about the most amount of people in one area I would like to see. That's just, again, saying, we can't handle something like that right now. The traffic, the area,
And
it's just not feasible.
As you drive down Masters, right now, what I like when I drive down Masters is I see rural, and I turn, and then when Masters curves, you start to see suburban. But then it breaks into a little bit of estate again, I should say. And then it's suburban, and then it breaks again into estate. And it's kind of a nice, it's not just crowded at you. And that was what I was getting at too with the DeBello Lakes project, is it's just too much when you throw everything right up to the people that are used to having space, and all of a sudden you see 40 houses where there should only be 2 or 3. It's kind of a lot, and that's why we had so many people, I think, up here, what was that, a month ago, that were just up in arms about it, and it's like, I understand it, I'm the same way.
Although the cottage homes, that to me would be more like a over 55 community or something like that, which I think Meridiana's planning something to that effect.
But that's nice.
But that's, yeah, so that, they're not going to be on the road every day. Usually, over 55 or 65, they'll get out, but that's the other thing I want to think. We have an aging community. So when we pile a bunch of people in one area, it's hard for them to get out there and do stuff because they get nervous or they don't want anything to happen. And I want to have a place where they can go and feel like they're still at home. And I think if we start smushing a bunch of people together in one area or multiple areas, it's just not going to be right. I wouldn't want to live like that at 85 either. So,
Okay.
But the cottage homes, that's something maybe
That's nice.
geared towards a retirement community or something, because it's like you said, they're usually within a circle and
Okay.
there's an access from the back and,
Let's let them finish their presentation.
oh, sorry.
Thank you.
This is good, but what I was going to mention is, that's kind of where we are on the first option is,
Yeah.
see what comes to you as a master plan development, the larger developments, if it's a component of that. Those typically are planned unit development zoning approvals, so you have that give and take. So that's where you are. The only seed I'm going to plant for down the road with communities that we work with that are well past where you are now, it usually comes up with, where are our teachers going to live? Where are our firefighters going to live? It's an affordable housing option, other types of housing besides single-family detached. You're not there, but that could be the kind of a turning point for some communities down the road when you're trying to house some of your employment base, especially for public jobs. All right, we're going to wrap up with this map goes into land use and community character part of the plan. So as we've shown you on some of the other sections, there's a short list of goals for these, hopefully trying to capture, again, what we heard from the community.
Yes, so for this section, we have 4 goals. This one's based about what we talked about a lot today, so character. So increased emphasis on character-based land use planning and development standards to achieve a wider range of residential lot sizes and neighborhood designs. Retain more open and green spaces within residential and other development, and ensure that semi-rural character remains a visible and valued part of Manvel's identity even as growth continues.
Any heartburn words, phrases on as we go through these?
I'm going to let y'all finish yours.
The second one related to more choice in housing, and commercial. So more choice in housing and commercial development locations and types to serve different lifestyles that we just mentioned, from rural and large lot homesteads to suburban neighborhoods, while managing growth to avoid congestion and overdevelopment. Local businesses, we heard this one a lot during all of our public engagement. So more homegrown and well-supported local businesses, especially family-friendly sit-down restaurants, other retail and services, and leisure and recreation options that create vibrant community hubs without overwhelming the area with high-intensity commercial sprawl. And then the last goal before we head into the actions is upgraded development ordinances and standards that better position the city to manage growth, provide flexibility for innovative site design, and achieve desired outcomes and superior quality across the community, along with an ongoing focus on the Southwest State Highway 6 corridor. And I'll turn it over back to Gary for actions.
So just to kind of recap on those, the first one was kind of touching on the character emphasis, especially the semi-rural aspect, and the identity as a semi-rural community still. Kind of that as you develop, there's going to be more of a range of different types of land use and locations. So that's going to evolve, but that emphasis on not being an overcrowded place, as we talked about. The business goal. And then we'll talk more about this development ordinances goal. But on the action side, as we showed you in some of the other sections of the plan, we're really trying to focus on just a handful of strategic actions to take in the coming years based on this new plan. One thing that we would recommend, and as always, we defer to the city attorney, his comfort level, but a lot of cities we work with have gone to what's called a unified development code, especially in your case where in the city code, the subdivision regulations are a separate part. There's the zoning part of the city code. You have landscaping within the zoning here, but signs, for example, is elsewhere in the city code. What unified codes do is try to pull all those pieces together into one overall ordinance that touches on just about everything that an applicant and staff and you as decision-making bodies might deal with for a development. Landscaping, signs, parking, land use, all these pieces, but it's also the procedural part that typically with unified codes, there's a clear path to, okay, I need a certain approval for my subdivision. I may need a zoning approval. Do I need this approval? Unified code tries to connect the dots between all those things. So it's a more holistic way of looking at development and hopefully more consistency over time, and meant to be more user-friendly for all sides, once again, on the public and the private side. And then once you have one of those codes, sets up for cleaner updates typically in the future versus dealing with zoning over here, subdivision over there. So we'll elaborate on that in the plan recommendation. We brought some of these to you before, but just to recap, we have an action item to some things that we think are important to look at in the zoning ordinance. There's an overall purpose statement, but there's an opportunity now with the new strategic plan that we helped the city develop and is already adopted by council, plus the comprehensive plan being updated to make more direct connections to those in the zoning purpose statement. Also, a good practice in zoning ordinances is to have purpose statements for each of your zoning districts. What are they meant to accomplish? And that ties back to the categories in the comprehensive plan and on the map. So just needing to think about potentially reworking some zoning districts or some potential new districts based on this new map and plan. One of the things we highlighted previously was just there's not really that typical zone in between your open single family, the 1 acre, and then all the way down to a 6,300 foot square lot. Really needs something in between that's really in that bright yellow on the map, the suburban residential, whether that's typically 8 to 12,000, somewhere in that range type of lot. You're not seeing as much of that in development proposals nowadays. There's a lot of push for smaller lots, but in a community that's trying to maintain some larger lot, semi-rural atmosphere, that would be a good place to go with zoning. And also we showed how some of the current zoning districts really throw a lot of very wide-ranging uses together, from heavy industrial to daycare and restaurants, all in the same district. So a chance to look at that more directly. Also under that same action with the zoning ordinance, we talked about that the zoning ordinance today doesn't deal with coverage. So when we talked about coverage of land with the character emphasis, there's setbacks, there's certainly height requirements, things like that, but it doesn't deal directly with how much of a property can be covered with building plus parking. And in an area that has drainage issues, certainly the amount of paving, and in an area that's hot at this time of year, pavement certainly contributes to that. Development standards, certainly to get to the types of outcomes that you're looking for, and if you can build incentives into your zoning to get the outcomes that you're looking for, that's a best practice as well. And finally, just the point that there's the Highway 6 overlay today. Really, we think that setting a bar higher for commercial development should be across the board. The 288 corridor and off of the major corridors into the rest of the community, you should set a good standard for commercial development. And the third strategic priority, last one, is the housing emphasis. And again, we mentioned we just need to put some wording in the plan of where we are today and maybe plant a seed for down the road. We're not there yet, but is there a time, because you're likely going to get more of those type proposals over time, where the community stands on other housing options, but we would make the connection to the reasons why we're saying no potentially at this point, traffic concerns, school impacts, things like that. Mr. Chairman, we're done. We will leave it there and certainly
Thank you very much.
entertain other discussion.
Very nice presentation.
Thank you.
Anybody have any questions for him? No?
Really.
Okay. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
We, working with staff, our next step is really to pull together the overall draft of the comprehensive plan and go to a workshop with council, be able to walk them through. Typically, you would be invited. We want to have that discussion with everybody. So, but we'll be looking at dates and trying to get that set. But that's our next step going from here. Thank you.
Look forward to it.
Perfect, thanks.
Okay. Number 4.
Okay. Agenda item F.
Yeah.
Everyone's second favorite. Consideration of possible action to direct staff to provide applicants written statements of the conditions for any conditional approvals, the reasons for disapprovals of any plans or plats that were not approved per Texas Local Government Code 212.0091. Motion. And then finally, I have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Seconds. And all in favor? And motion passes 6-0.